On August 22, 2003, 19-year-old Ashley Spence was awoken by a man lying on top of her, holding a pillow over her face. Throughout the night, he repeatedly raped and brutally assaulted her. The consequence of this horrific crime was more than a night of pain. It led Spence into a labyrinth of fear, shame, self-effacement, and self-medication. But with the patience of friends and family, and the guidance of a few trauma-informed individuals who she calls angels, Spence began to heal, reconnected with her body, and now advocates for comprehensive DNA testing nationwide.
Feeling lost?
Then you're in the right place.
I'm Amanda Knox.
And I'm Christopher Robinson.
And this is Labyrinths. Maybe paint me a scene of where you were at, what was going on in your life when you were 19 years old.
I had moved from Texas, my home state, to Arizona State, and I was so thrilled to be free. A lot of my friends, they didn't go away. They stayed in Austin, and so I had already been at ASU 1 year, and I loved it. So I thought I would go a few weeks early before school started, get on my own, move into my apartment, get to know my new roommate. We didn't know each other too well, and so I was thrilled. And, you know, I was reunited with my girlfriends, and I just remember it was a really hot Arizona night, and the sun was setting, and it was pink and purple and shades of orange. And then it started to get darker, and I was on the phone with my mom, and, she had become my best friend after I left. We became closer, and I just remember it was a normal conversation. I thought I was going out with my friends that night, and all of a sudden I just felt this sensation in the pit of my belly, in my gut. And it wasn't an anxiety-provoking sensation, which can feel, in my experience, flighty and, not
panicky,
grounded.
yeah.
Yeah, just light, you're not grounded. This was this very certain inner knowing that something was terribly wrong. And I didn't know what it was, but it got so strong that I didn't want to hang up the phone. It got just crazy, and I couldn't shake it. And I thought, I was 19 going out with my friends. I thought maybe I would get in trouble or something. I didn't know, I had no clue. I thought maybe we were going to the bar, down at ASU, and I was only 19. Maybe I would get in trouble for something like that. Nothing ever registered in my mind what was about to happen. Nothing. And so, I went out, and my friends came to my apartment, and my entire life was changed that night.
Gosh, it's a really interesting note about how your body seems to know a thing before your mind knows it.
I always felt safe. I was very blessed. I always felt safe going to bed in my own apartment. Okay, always. And so I thought I would be safe in my bed. And, my roommates left, and one of my friends had lost a boyfriend in high school, and we were still so young, 19 when you reflect on it. You're babies in a sense. And
yeah.
So we were consoling each other and stayed up late, and it got late. And I kept saying, well, why don't you just stay here? We can share my bed. You can stay on the couch. My roommate and her boyfriend, her new boyfriend, went to bed. And finally, they just decided they needed to go. So they got in cabs. And it was this was a long time ago. I had a Norah Jones CD. I put it in my CD player by my bed. And, I just did normal things, got ready for bed. And I always slept with a pillow, on my belly with a pillow behind my head. I never really thought anything of it. It just helped me keep noise out and keep light out. And so I always went to bed like that. And I did that night. And, in the middle of the night, an intruder came into my apartment while I was asleep. My roommate and her boyfriend were asleep. He smothered my face with the pillow. And I remember as he was tearing my clothes off from the waist down, I thought it was a nightmare. Those nightmares, and you're just wake up. This can't be real. Wake up, Ashley. And I kept saying that. And I quickly thought, oh my God, this is not a nightmare. This is real. And I need to fight. And in that moment, I tried to fight with everything in me, and I was nearly killed. I mean, he beat me so severely, and the pillow was suffocating my face so tightly that there was no air. And I frantically was looking for it everywhere, but there was no air. And I knew I'm going to die. So I said, I have two choices. I keep fighting and I die, or I have to let it happen to try to live. And I desperately wanted to live. So I was forced to endure hours and hours of rapes and beatings. I could never see the man's face that was doing it to me. And I did not think I would survive, but I detached to survive. I turned numb. And I just remember the moments. It was morning at this point, and I couldn't see anything except for like my headboard was to the wall, and there was a window, and I could see he peeled the blinds open between the pillow. I mean, I could see his little fingers open it, and I just was shocked. I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's morning. Where is everyone? How come no one could hear me? How is this happening?" But he crawled off my body, and I just was trembling because I thought, oh my gosh, I might live. And he just said, do not tell anybody. And, if you do, I will come back and I will kill you. I will be watching you just like I was watching you. And he knew what I had been wearing. He knew what my friends had been wearing that night. So clearly he had been watching us. And, he got away. I never saw his face. And I'll never forget, I was frantically looking for my phone. I slammed the door shut, locked it. It was gone. I put on pants, and I broke the window because I didn't want to be stuck in there. I didn't know where he was. And then I ran to my roommate's master bedroom, and I just started banging the door down. And I'll never forget the look of shock on her and her boyfriend's face. They opened the door, and I just stood there with blood dripping down, just screaming I've been raped, and they were in the next room, had no clue.
Again, going back to that, like, how your body knows before your mind does. Like, I think the really creepy thing is it's almost as if your body knew that he had been stalking you. Like, this person had been stalking you and your friends. Like, he did not just randomly stumble upon your apartment. He very specifically had been watching you and knew what you were wearing and knew what your friends were wearing, and very clearly had criminal intent the entire time. He was threatening you, and he very purposefully made sure that you never saw his face so that he could presumably get away with it. So, this was somebody who knew exactly what he was doing. And I think it's so fascinating that even though you didn't know, like, you went to bed that night thinking that you were going to just go to bed and wake up like any other day, your body knew before it happened. It just gives me chills. Like, what do you make of that?
Reflecting on it, I don't know that I could have change the outcome. I always think about like destiny versus fate. Can you change? I don't know that anything I could have done. I do feel like that was like my fate. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was, but I knew it. I knew it in my bones. And now reflecting, I don't know, was he watching me at that moment when I was on the phone with my mom? I don't know, but he was watching us the whole night. And he was threatening me that if I were to make noises, he was going to bring my friends in next because he had them captive in the other room. It was just, it was wild. But then after everything happened, like that feeling went away. It's unbelievable to me that your body can know, like I don't know if it's a feminine intuition or what it is, but I knew something was terribly, terribly wrong.
You called 911, and how are you received by the authorities?
I am a very fortunate story. I had a very incredible responding first officer, Officer Williams, and I know that's not always the case. And I am so grateful, and I want that to be the gold standard for every victim, because the first point of contact is crucial. I was in a state of disbelief just pacing the parking lot. I was totally detached, and it felt like I was waiting for hours. I have no concept of time. But when he finally drove up, I remember the police car drives up and we lock eyes, and he just mouthed the words, "Oh my God," when he saw me standing there. And in that moment, everything just went totally numb. And I don't know if you can relate to this, but going through something traumatic, I felt literally like I started to float out of my body, and I was just like looking down on this crime scene, and it didn't feel like me. I was just watching, it was really crazy. But he knew that, okay, we did not get any eyewitness evidence. When he brought me into the apartment, there was a stool with a pillow and then like a vase and something else that this guy had put on in front of my roommate's door that opened outwards. So he would hear if anybody heard him, it would give him time to get away, or God knows what else he would have done. But so that just was startling to me. And the first thing I said was, he was like, we need to go have a forensic exam. And I wasn't watching crime shows. I wasn't reading them. That was not my thing. I don't know if CSI was on. This was 2003. If it was, I didn't know what a rape kit was. I had no clue what forensic examination was. And I just said, I'm not going anywhere until I can shower, until I can brush my teeth. I feel absolutely disgusting.
You wanted to get him off of you,
Yes,
like literally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was disgusting. And, he just said kindly, like, you can't shower, you can't brush your teeth, but you will be safe. But I want him, I like to talk about my experience with him because I want every single police officer to treat every single victim in every circumstance of a crime in that same way. He was like the gold star of law enforcement. He truly
So can you tell me like what it was specifically that he did that made you feel so safe?
He was kind to me, and he made me feel believed right away, and he was gentle. And I don't know, they say like trauma informed, but it was like an inherent knowing of compassion almost, like he wasn't trauma informed, but he knew how to be compassionate with me. And I was really scared, and we don't know how to react when these things happen. Like you're in a state of panic and deep shock, like deep trauma shock. And so he was able to just calm me to a state of, my nervous system was able to relax a little bit, and I didn't feel threatened by him. And there was actually a woman that came after him, and she was a detective, and I had the totally opposite experience. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm so glad it wasn't her, because I don't know if I would have gone to have my forensic exam had she been the first one, because it scared me.
Yeah. Can you tell me about the difference of treatment? Because I think that's a really crucial point.
Right.
That like you can have good intentions towards someone who's a victim of crime, but you can still, like, there are things that you can do that will either trigger them or that will calm them. And like, so what was it that Officer Williams was doing that calmed you versus what was this other this female detective doing that was triggering you?
His energy was calm. He was kind in his words. He was gently guiding me. He wasn't accusatory of me. He was just listening and then putting together, okay, well, the next step is to do this, get her to a forensic exam. The woman was very cold, very abrasive, and unkind. And right away, she was like, well, where had you been earlier the night? Have you been drinking? All these things. What were you wearing earlier? Where were you and your friends? And it was jarring to me, and it was really scary, because then I started to feel threatened. I'm like, did I do something wrong?
Right.
If she's treating me like this right away. But I felt there was such a juxtaposition of the energy that I knew if I had been treated in that way, I don't think I would have had the courage. I would have been like, okay, this is too much. This is way too much, because I've already been victimized. Now I can't go through, like, this is victimizing me in a different way, that I'm feeling threatened, and I'm feeling like I did something wrong, and I'm really terrified. Like, I'm scared out of my mind.
Right. Yeah, I think that's so interesting that even just like the kinds of questions that are asked suggest a kind of viewpoint of the person who is questioning you. Like, were you drunk?
Right.
Like, of course, you're immediately going to think, are you blaming me for what just happened? Like,
right.
So like, just for all of you, like, first responders out there, like, how do we respond? Like, try to be, when you are asking questions, just to get a lay of the land, be good at listening and like understand that like certain questions that you're asking are going to come across as really blaming, and you don't need to do that. There are different ways of asking questions to get the information that you need that doesn't like put a victim on their heels and make them feel like now they're, in an interrogation room.
Right. And that first connection is the most critical. It honestly is. I mean, everyone along the way has to do their part, but that very first is very important.
Talk to me about the rape kit. So it was established that you couldn't take a shower, you couldn't do the very thing that you wanted to, which was to wash the disgusting filth of this human being off of you. Instead, this disgusting filth was evidence that needed to be gathered. What was that process like?
Terrifying. And I went in a van, and it's all kind of a haze, because your brain, again, when you're in shock, you don't You're not thinking normal. Your brain is not working normally. Okay. So I just like was in a daze. I go in there, and again, you have to get completely undressed, and then you have to have the open back, like you're going to your gyno appointment, but you're in a sterile room and an environment that is very intense. It's very, you've just been totally violated, and every part of my body was violated in every way possible. And, just having it, you just feel so weak. I don't know how to explain it. It feels very, very weak. And once again, what I realized down the road, I would not have been able to endure it, because I think it was hours of examination. So they have to take photographs. They have to swab your entire body. They have to check for tears, injuries, get blood, get saliva, look for DNA, and collect as much off of you as possible. And it's really traumatic, but I was very lucky because my forensic nurse was trained in sexual assault nurse examinations. I didn't know that was a thing, but where they took me to was a clinic, and every city, I don't care how rural it is, everyone needs to have access to this, because again, if I didn't have someone, she asked every step of the way, are you okay? This is what I'm going to do next. You're so bright. Like she made me feel believed, and she was healing me, and I didn't realize that. Her name was Jennifer, and I never thought I would see her again. But she was an angel, because in that moment, she created a safe space in a cold, sterile room with my naked body after I'd just been brutally attacked, and she made me feel safe. And I can't tell you what a gift that is. And what we've learned later, I've become friends with her, is a really important message, I think, for victims. If anyone's listening, you can actually go to these clinics and have a sexual assault nurse examination. I want you to go somewhere trained, though, and you don't actually have to press charges, but they will give you like the morning after pill, STDs, they will check for injuries, and then they will give you support that can help you go on your way. But it's a very intense thing, and that's why it's so critical. I'm very lucky. Everyone in my story, which I call them like my angels now, I was lucky with like the best of the best, and everyone needs to have someone like that if they go through what I have.
I mean, I think the vast majority of people don't even know that such clinics exist.
Right.
And much less that there are people who are specialized in that kind of treatment of a patient, because it's not just a physical injury, it's a psychological one. It occurs to me that it's totally understandable why you would feel so uncomfortable and violated, because it feels like, as you are there and it's your naked body being examined, that you are the thing that is under scrutiny. And I wonder, is it at all communicated to victims that it is not your body that is under scrutiny? It is the person who did this to you who is under scrutiny in this moment. Like, I know it looks like we're looking at your body, but what we are looking for is evidence of his body on you. And we are going to very meticulously sort of we're going to peel back layer by layer, skin cell by skin cell. We're going to remove him from you and put him in a box so that you can decide what you want to do with him afterwards.
That's amazing. I don't know if anyone's ever said that like that, and that's groundbreaking. That totally shifts the psychology of it. It does, because it doesn't feel like it's your body. It feels like you're taking him off. I love that. That is beautiful, actually, and that is very powerful.
Because that's what you wanted. Like, you wanted to take a shower, you wanted to brush your teeth, you wanted him and his just violence off of you. And maybe if we could think about it as the rape kit is the moment where an expert meticulously takes away and documents the himness of it, and takes and sheds it from you, helps you shed.
Because you feel like it lives in you forever, and that's we can get into that later, but you feel that's that's a very beautiful way to start that healing process of regaining your body power, your control of yourself and yourself, just your sense of self. I felt like after that, I was not myself, so that's a beautiful way to start that journey of healing.
I love that part of the training was a very simple thing, which I imagine that someone a nurse who is not trained in this would miss potentially, which is the act of asking permission and like informing the patient, like anytime I'm about to touch you or do anything, I'm just going to let you know what's happening and I'm going to ask you permission first. Because of course you're coming off of a situation where you had no control over your body and like and you are being put through an examination that you don't really have control over. But like that graceful step of like giving back someone an opportunity to say no.
Absolutely. Well, absolutely, because otherwise, you didn't have a choice in the other realm, and this is like having that, it helps you to begin to reclaim your power back in a way, because you're the decision maker over your body again and what's done and what's not done. And there is something very beautifully healing in that is critical to healing, I think, it's critical to it, having that body autonomy and having the choice over your body in that way. It's very powerful. It seems small, but it's not when you come from such a traumatic injury to your entire body.
Yeah. So immediately after this, it's not like the trauma goes away. Like, yes, the assault happened, but he had threatened your life. You didn't know who he was. He had stalked you. Can you talk to me about some of the lingering fears and traumas that you endured after the assault?
The night terrors, the fear. I couldn't do simple things. Well, I couldn't sleep, but I couldn't wash my face because it meant like splashing water on my eyes and my eyes would be closed because I was always panicked. Is he behind me? It's all over the news now. Overnight, my entire life changed. And, I've heard you speak of that too. And it's something that many people can't understand. I'm like, wait, I'm not Ashley now. I'm just this victim that is trying to find closure. It's all over the news. I tried to get the strength to go back to school. So school started about a week later and I still had bruises and I'm like, I'm going to do this. And I thought I went to school with him. I thought for sure this was a college kid. I thought, no way is this a stranger. That never crossed my mind actually. And I couldn't see him, but I needed to create some sort of closure. And I remember there was one guy in particular that my brain was like, it was him because he had been in our apartment 2 nights before. But he wanted to watch like the Ted Bundy movie or something. And that was like really creepy.
Yeah.
So there were little things that I'm like, weird. And then he called our apartment at 3 a.m. that night. And so I was uncomfortable around him and he knew the outlay of our apartment. And so I thought for sure my brain needed to connect it to someone. And I'm like, it was that guy. So the detectives they got 50 people voluntarily to give their DNA around 50. That was like all that was at school at that time because we were there early. I had to call this guy while it was being recorded. Like, I know you were in building K and, all these different things with law enforcement accusing him. And because my brain thought for certain it was him. Okay. And finally he gave his DNA. It took a while to get the return on it and it cleared him. It wasn't him. And I remember I was like, what? Like, that can't be right. And then they're like, no, it's very accurate, and I was shocked. And I was also devastated because it was so scary. And then I couldn't even process what he had gone through until later, but I just couldn't believe that I could have been that wrong, And so I ended up dropping out of school. I moved to Newport Beach, California with my friend who had lost her boyfriend. We both just were desperate to be like free, and she wasn't happy in Arizona and I was not happy because I thought, I'm never going to be myself here again. I'm never going to have closure. No one looks at me the same. We tried to start a beautiful new life there, and it was great because I was starting fresh, but not talking about it and just trying to be Ashley and not what happened. It looked great on the outside, but I just started self-medicating myself to death, massive amounts of alcohol, Xanax. I didn't want to tell a therapist what I had been through, so I lied that I was scared to fly. I was not flying anywhere, but, I just didn't, I'm like, I don't want to talk about, I didn't even want to talk to a therapist. So I literally just suppressed it. And it was really scary because there were multiple times I was sent to the hospital and didn't remember over drinking at the local bar or having an ambulance come pick me up. I didn't remember them clearing me to go home. And, that numbing and that trying so bad to fake it and not tell anybody, it was really scary. I'm very lucky to be here, actually.
Yeah, this is a part of your story that is really interesting for me because it's like I never had the opportunity to decide whether or not to tell people about this horrific thing that was happening to me because it was just everywhere. Like there
Mm-hmm.
was nowhere in the world that wasn't reporting on it. So, like, on the one hand, you're right. You're in Arizona, and now everyone knows you as the victim. But on top of that, there's also presumably a rapist running around that you have been despite all of your tireless efforts with the detectives to, get like not to skip over this, like to get 50 people to volunteer their DNA to be excluded as potential suspects is a huge undertaking. To call and confront suspects over the phone and retrace every step of the night and go undercover to local bars to like gather DNA. Like this is a huge endeavor. And to have that result be negative, 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 not him, not him, not him, over and over and over again has got to be debilitating. Also because like, you talk in your book about how in the immediacy afterwards you had this fury inside that gave you a kind of fire, but that fire can only last for so long before it gets smothered by this disappointment. And then you're sort of left hanging with no answers. Like, this rapist could be right around the corner. And so it makes absolute sense that you would just want to walk away from what is ultimately just a shit story because you don't get a happy ending. Like, you don't get to determine who you are. You are stuck as this like victim without closure in Arizona. And so you make the decision to move. And that's, totally understandable, even just to feel safe,
Right.
like, because there's a
Totally.
rapist where you were.
Totally.
Let's get out of there and get away from this person. And also to have the opportunity to not be attached to this like hamster wheel of dissatisfaction and disappointment that comes from being a part of this case. Like that makes absolute sense. And you decided not to let anyone know. Like, I think I was really struck reading your story that even your brother didn't know. Like, your parents knew, but your brother didn't know because you didn't tell him. So you really kept this close to your chest. Like, it's not just to like, oh, you're at the bar and like people are telling crazy stories and you just decide to keep it to yourself. Like, it is really locked down deep inside you. And I'm wondering about that decision because like the empathy part of me is thinking, is this because you didn't want it to be your story? And so in a way of not sharing it with people, it was a way of sort of like putting it in a little box in your mind and being like, this is not me. Like this.
Right.
I'm wondering, like, does that resonate? Like, can you tell me more about like that decision?
It does. It also, the pain was so deep. It was so scary and so dark. And I was sick of it. I just wanted to be free. I just felt like the more people that you tell, and then everyone looks at you different and then they talk to you, and I hated it all. I hated all of that. Like, I don't like a lot of attention on me. I don't like birthdays. This is not even the same, but I'm like, don't look at but I hated that I couldn't just be me. And it was also very scary and it was too painful. And him being on the loose and threatening my life and knowing that, I don't have closure. And I wanted to protect my brother because he was 6 years younger than me. And I felt like how unfair that he has to see the world through this dark lens that now I know exists. I was so disconnected from my soul, like completely from my body and my soul. I didn't care. I didn't care what happened to me. I didn't care, like it was just it was too painful and it was too scary. And I just wanted to be free. I wanted to be free of it.
I want to keep coming back to that word because it's obviously a very meaningful word for me, but it's a very meaningful word for you as well, because it seems like you bring it up a lot in your book, this idea of being free and how do I be free of this person who did this to me? And because you were a free-spirited kid, like freedom is a meaningful thing for you. Were you the same person afterwards, or did it inevitably leave a mark on your personality?
Oh my gosh, I don't recognize myself even a few years ago. The journey of healing, it has been along, but no, I lost so much of my confidence, my self-worth. And I was insecure going into it, normal things growing up, but this was different. And I was really sad. And I remember I saw a picture from my parents at Christmas, and my mom had her apron on, and, my brother's there, my sister, and it's so joyful, and everyone, they're grateful I'm alive and I'm home. And, but my eyes were like sunk in and so dark, and my smile, like there was nothing there. It was really weird, but I didn't even feel, I've had grief because, closure took 13 years, but when you look at being young, and I think you can relate to this probably in deeper ways than me, that a lot of people go into those years and they're their best years, most fun of their life. Okay. And they're in their 20s. They're just living life. And,
supposedly these 20s are supposed to be great.
Right,
I don't know what that's all about.
Yeah. I mean, there was something that felt like I felt grief. I've gotten through it, but there was a while that I felt great sadness for that.
You talk in your book that you carry a sense of remorse for the chaos that you unintentionally inflicted on all the people who loved you during this time of in-betweenness, from the assault to, this feeling unmoored and unanchored to yourself and to any kind of resolution. Can you talk to me a little bit? I mean, it sounds like you were doing a lot of self-medicating and getting yourself in positions of vulnerability and ending up in the hospital. Can you tell me do you want to share any more specifics about that time period and, what your friends and family were doing for you to hold you in that space and how the holding of you was difficult?
I could never thank them enough. And it wasn't until 2 years ago, I go to visit my friend Gianna, and now we both have kids, and we just sat outside and I cried. Oh my gosh, this is the only part that I get choked up on, but the pain and chaos I put on people unintentionally, because it was unresolved, but I was out of control, and I didn't care about myself. I hated myself. I hated my body. I felt wretched just existing. I just felt like nothing was the same anymore and nothing was mine. And I created so much chaos that I was obviously out of control, but I also was not, I don't think I was a kind person. I mean, I think some people would be like, oh, she was a fun party girl. Like on my 21st birthday in Newport, they put a helmet on me with a balloon so they could find me everywhere. But I mean, the level of chaos of like, that's how drunk I would get, but it would go to the extreme. And no one got to know me, but then I didn't care what happened to me. So it was hard for me to care about these incredible people that held space for me, my roommate and her boyfriend and, her siblings that lived out there, my parents, just people that over and over and over again. And at what point, like, I don't know if I would have been in their shoes, if I could have stood me for that long, I mean that. And so I was really grateful that I was able to give her my genuine heartfelt tears. And just like, once I got older, I didn't notice it at first, even I would say 5 years ago, I didn't recognize that in me, but I have this healer and she's like, you have to start looking at your own shadow sides. And I was like, what? You have to exit pain. You have to exit victim mentality. And then you have to start looking at yourself and look at the dark parts of you. And that to me was very transformational in my healing, because I realized, wow, I didn't mean to do this, but I've caused harm on a lot of people in my life as a result of this. And I need to heal this. I need to finally, really put the work into healing that. So it's been a journey, to say the least.
Yeah. No, I this really resonates with me. And, you'll get a sense of this from reading my new book. But, I think that the ripple effects of crimes are way more far-reaching than people give credit for. And, one of the big things that I hoped for coming home from prison was like this idea that I would get to go back to the life that I had before this bad thing that happened to me. And when that life no longer existed, and I realized that I was changed by this experience, there is a feeling of like rejecting, like you're like, no, like this is not the life I want, and this is not who I want to be. And you're so untethered to, and there's no clear path ahead for who you are or where you belong in the world and what your value is, that it's really easy in such a vulnerable like space and in mindset to like make mistakes. And I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong people. I bottled things up as well. And when you bottle things up, they come out in really weird, awkward ways. And you're trying to have a normal conversation with your family members, and suddenly you're pissed off, and everyone's like, "What is going on?" So like, all of that gets stored somewhere inside of you. And if you don't have a good way of expressing it or having an outlet for it, it's just going to become disruptive to your life and manifest in really unhealthy ways. And so I guess that leads to the next question, which is the next part of your book talks about surrender and how you did find a healthy outlet for that, debilitating anxiety that you were storing in your body. Can you talk to me a little bit about what that was?
Yeah. So my mom had always done yoga growing up, and I thought it was super weird because, again, this was before it was mainstream, and she'd be like pumping her belly out and just like doing weird poses. And I'm like, that is so weird. I'm never doing that. Life has its own plan. But my roommate, I think she made me go, and I went more for her than me, honestly, because she was just at her wit's end. She's like, please come to this yoga class with me. And I'm like, okay, fine, I'll go. And it was more than that. When I look back, I was so like grossed out by my body. I hate to say that. It's true. Like, I just felt like not ever since it happened. I'm like, this isn't mine. I'm just like existing in the shell of a body, and anything to make me connect to it was horrible, but I thought. So I was fearful of it, and it was new. And so I'm like, okay. So I go and I get like the rental mat, and I roll it out in like the very darkest back corner. And I'm still like very insecure at this point. I don't like eye contact. I can't go in the middle of the room because I can't have anyone behind me. I need to always see what's going on behind me. And so, I'm in the corner against the wall, and I wanted to leave, but our yoga teacher came in, and she had this beautiful energy and like big curly hair and a white smile. And she just said, like, her first words were something like, my husband's been going through cancer, and I know that we're all coming into this space in different walks of life. But the point is that we're all here. We've all shown up. So just meet yourself where you're at. And it kind of gave me this like, okay, and I never introduced myself, but I kept going back to just her classes. And even then I would start going without my roommate, which was a big deal. And, there were poses where I'm like, my feet are rooted in the ground. I don't know if you've done Warrior 2. Have you done yoga?
Oh, I have done yoga, yes, my friend.
You love yoga. Okay, so
I am a yoga person.
I remember that. Okay, so, there was a moment where the pose like clicks in you, and there's one where your feet, like the warrior poses, and your feet are anchored and your arms are out. And I remember there was like sweat dripping down me, and I felt this surge of power like radiate inside of my body. And I thought this was power that had been literally stolen by this monster. And I was like, wow. It was like a little bit electrifying. And I'm like, that's really cool. I want more of that. And, then I'm sober going, and I'm balancing on one leg, an airplane pose. And it's really hard. And I'm having to focus my drishti, which is your gaze, this, but like, and it was really cool because then I'm starting to get clear, like little things that I didn't know. And I'm breathing and I'm connecting to my body. And, there was like the 8th yoga class, and she played Let It Be by the Beatles. And then normally in Shavasana, I was terrified to close my eyes. I could never rest. I was, the lights dimmed. I'm in a strange place. This is too scary. So I would be very tense. But this particular class, she put the Beatles on, and I just started like crying on my mat quietly. And, my mom's name is Mary, and she's always been just a little light in my life. And so they play Let It Be, and
Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be.
Wait, you have a great voice, okay? But yeah, it was that moment. It was so beautiful because I was like, I got to quit fighting this. This is I was fighting because I didn't want it to be my life, and then there was no closure. And then I'm like, just let it be and surrender a little bit. And I thought maybe I'm going to be okay. And that teacher gave me a gift that I could never express how valuable. I was able to unmedicated, totally sober, in a strange place, close my eyes, surrounded by strangers, and rest. And like, what a gift, you know, it was life-changing. And she helped me get clear, and I got a job. I graduated college, things that I thought were completely unachievable after everything happened.
Right. Yeah, I would love to like sit in this moment, because as far as you knew, because you had already gone through the process of trying to figure out who it was who had done this to you, like in this moment of your life, you were stymied because you didn't have closure, and you had to like come to a place of accepting that you might never know who had done this to you, even though like there's that fear that like he's probably out there doing this to other people. Like there's like some horrific realities that you have to like be able to acknowledge, but at the same time, as the Beatles would say, let it be. Like you don't have to bear the weight of that burden in your body. It is. I love that that song resonates with you, because that was the song that I sang to myself over and over and over again in like especially during the first 8 months of my imprisonment, when I was under investigation and I was in isolation and I didn't know what was happening. And it's truly like a really beautiful song that's so gentle, and it's a song that like holds you when you have nothing else to hold on to, right? And I love that you were able to, of all ways to experience it in Savasana, which ultimately is the position where you are not holding yourself anymore. It is the ground and the earth and the everything that is holding you. It is like the one pose where you submit and release and allow everything else to bear the weight of you. So it's just, I think that's, if anything, what comes to mind is just like, once again, somehow you found yourself in this incredibly lucky position to be in a place with the right people at the right time to give you what you needed, which is so interesting, right? Considering the bad luck for a part of your journey. Have you thought about that? About like, you talk about how you were lucky to get the right first responder, and then you are also lucky to get this seemingly trauma-informed yoga teacher. Like,
absolutely.
Have you thought about luck and how luck plays a role?
I feel beyond with that. There's so many synchronicities and so many gifts that like have gotten me through. I don't know. I think about people that, you know, even when it first happened, I'm like, I can't imagine people that don't have family or that haven't told anybody or don't have friends that are holding the space for them. How do you get through? How do you survive? So I've been so fortunate in that. I really, really have.
How many years later did you finally get the call?
7 years.
7 years go by.
Yeah, 2010, I had moved back home. So I was in Newport Beach on the peninsula. We had this cute little beach house on 40th Street. And eventually I moved back with my husband at the time. He's now the father of my children. We're no longer together, but we moved back. And, you know, I get the call that there had been a DNA match. And I was not only shocked, like I can't even tell you, I fell to the ground. I was the rush in my body of just all the emotions. And then when I processed and I found out it was a stranger, I was sick. I was very sick because that was just so unbelievable to me. I couldn't believe it. And then I felt like rage take over because I'm like, why now? Like I've just spent 7 years to try to be normal, to try to survive. I didn't think I was going to make it. I physically survived. I was dead inside. I'm re-sparking joy in my life again. And now you're telling me now I have to relive this all over again. And that's kind of a crazy thing because you would think it would be total elation, but I really had a mix of that. And then I felt relief that he would maybe never do it again because I would hear every night trying to go to bed, haunting, muffled screams of his victims in my head. I knew he was out there and I knew he was continuing to do this. So there was that relief, but I did feel all of those things. And the scariest part to me that I couldn't comprehend was I blindly picked Newport Beach. You know, my friend's sister lived there and we thought it's by the ocean, great, California, love it. Ends up being the very city that this guy was from. So when he was arrested all those years later, he was trying to break into a home where 3 young women lived on 41st Street. So have you ever been to Newport Beach? It's tiny.
No.
It's a tiny beach town. So we were literally like 1 block from where I lived all those years. He was trying to break into a home. A police officer saw him. They got into some sort of altercation. He ended up resisting the arrest of the officer, which is a felony in California. And thankfully, California is one of just 19 states in the U.S. that collects DNA at the point of all felony arrests. So all 50 do it at conviction of a felony, but 19 do for every single felony. And thankfully, they had that law there, I thank God, every single day, even though it was really weird to me that I'm like, Newport, out of all the places, I moved to where he lived, but thank goodness, because had it been in Arizona where he raped me and multiple other college-age girls, he would still be free to rape and harm other women because he would have never had his cheek swabbed for that offense. So
wow,
they had that law there. They swabbed his cheek. They uploaded into our national DNA database CODIS, and it hit a match back to mine and multiple others. And, you know, when they arrested him, they found a shed behind his home full of women's underwear and ID cards from literally all over the world. He kept them. And in the meantime, he was married with a young son. So he was a violent predator.
Yeah, no, clearly some kind of psychopath, serial rapist, horrific person. Amazing that, you know, they were able to identify him. This is the part where I think it's really interesting to me, a certain choice that you made. And I get it because I am also a very curious person. You devote a whole chapter of your book to the darkness, which is this person, a man named Kevin Lee Francois. And you talk about how you went down this rabbit hole of trying to figure this fucker out. Can you talk to me about like that impulse to like just, who is this guy? What is this guy? What is his fucking deal? Like who is this person? Can you talk to me about that?
Well, when I found out and then the detectives showed me the picture and I couldn't have picked him out. If there was 2 people, literally, if it was just one, I would have been like, I've never seen this guy in my life. I couldn't understand that to me. That was so jarring. But then I became obsessed and like I would work and then on the other part of the tab, it would be like looking up mugshots.com because you can like find stuff about him. And I'm like, what? And then I'm looking at all the comments. Then I start looking and, oh my gosh, he has a family. What is his history? And I became obsessed to the point of unhealth. But simultaneously, I'm living a life normally on the outside, not telling anybody that this is even going on. So I'm still not telling anybody. So I'm compartmentalizing the darkness and then this guy, but I don't know what it was. I became like, it was all consuming. I couldn't let go, but I wasn't talking to anybody about it either. So it was just like living in my head. It made me crazy. I was obsessed with it.
This really struck me, that over the course of the trial, you actually had a chance to meet his family. And like you talk about how at first you didn't want to imagine this man as having a family because he was a monster. Monsters don't have families, but he has a wife and he has kids and he has, you know, a sister. And they wanted to talk to you. And I just would love to know like what that experience was like and the surprise that came from it.
Well, when we went to sentencing in 2015, I showed up and the prosecutor told me, you know, Ashley, I want you to know his family's here. And I just started like screaming, sobbing because it was so gut-wrenching. You know, as you're saying, it humanized this villain to me. I'm like, don't humanize him. Because even though I had closure and I'm lucky, it's still very having to, like someone going to prison for you. It's just a weird, your brain, it's hard to comprehend, right? So you don't feel like you feel relief. You don't feel like good. You feel relieved and justice. That's important. But when he said that, my heart shattered and he said, no, but they're here in support of you. And they want to know if it's okay, if they can come talk to you. And I just like, was in shock. And we walk up to each other, and it was his like sister, his nieces, his nephews, and we just all hugged each other and just cried in each other's arms. And we just exchanged how deeply sorry we were. And, you know, that moment, it broke my heart, because his own sister asked the judge on sentencing, she said, I had to become a detective because he was my brother. And I'm asking you to never let him see the light of day again. We're certain he's murdered people. And the courage that it took her to do that, it broke my heart, you know, and it connected us in this very strange way. But, you know, again, these serious violent crimes and people that are committing this, they wreak havoc on and poison and damage everybody that comes in their path. Total emotional, physical destruction, you know, it's heartbreaking, but it did connect us. And it was a very human moment. I don't know, very emotional.
I mean, it goes to show like what a dangerous person this person was, that his own family is coming forward and saying, you know, we've been scared of this man, you know, our entire lives. Were you ever able, just going back to that like deep-rooted sort of fixation and curiosity that you had for this monster, to like figure him out, or like to just understand like, how could this stranger do this to me? Were you ever able to talk to his family about anything about his background, or even why like his sister felt like certain that he had killed someone in the past? Like, were you ever able to talk to them about that?
No, I wasn't. And, you know, it was interesting because at trial, a painter had driven up, and I kind of felt uncomfortable because he was sitting behind me and he had this very angry look in his eyes. And at this point, I'm like, you get scared because he told me he'd kill me. Now fast forward, we're at trial, and is he going to get a hitman to kill me? I mean, I know these all seem like crazy scenarios, but they're not really out of touch after going through some, you know, things that we've been through.
Totally.
You start to realize that actually could be plausible. That could happen.
Totally.
So I was very scared. And so there's a victim advocate. I adore her. Her name was Rhonda. And literally her job is just to hold my hand in that process. And she's a total stranger. And I was like, I'm really scared behind me of this guy. And so she was like, I'll go talk to him. And he told her, you know, I just heard about this, and I drove all the way up from wherever he was from, hours and hours. And he was like, just so I could see him fry. He went to high school with him. So
wow.
I know he was in and out with like burglary and voyeurism and different low-level felonies and crimes. He never had DNA taken. He had been in and out. So maybe if they'd done it earlier, we could have prevented this. And gosh knows how many lives if he really did kill people. That's not proven right now, but.
So going back to the trial, we sort of gave a little bit of it away in the sentencing, in that he did get convicted.
He did.
Yay! Like, we're going to all say yay. But I think there is something that I wanted to sort of sit with you and ask you about over the course of the trial. And this was something that really resonated with me, because at a certain point, what you wrote was the lies, the audacity, like the audacity of this man to go up and call you a liar. Like, can you tell me like what his defense was?
At first, he was representing himself, and that's a very crazy thing, because the prosecutor fully made me aware. He said, this guy will probably be cross-examining you because he's his own representation. And I was shocked. I'm like, what do you mean? How is that possible? Like, how is that allowed? But okay, so I had to come to terms, if I wanted to go to trial, this man was going to cross-examine me because he was representing himself. So at the beginning, he opened up trial and he said, this woman we had consensual relations. She actually followed me to Newport Beach all the way from Arizona.
So you were stalking him is the implication. Got it.
Yes. Okay. It was so, I had the craziest panic attack though. I was pregnant at trial, and at the time, like, I ran out and I like collapsed in fetal position on the ground, and the victim advocate ran up to me and I'm like, what is he talking about? My brain just could not. It was just so insane. The whole thing was so insane, and I couldn't.
The audacity.
Yeah, exactly. You know this better than anybody. And it's just, So I couldn't comprehend. And so she just had to tell me, like, he's lying, just breathe. Like, he's lying, Ashley. We have to go back in there though, but he's lying, like, compose yourself. But I was so mad. And then by the time that I went to testify a few days later, all of a sudden a defense attorney shows up. And so he probably realized he was not equipped for that. But I go up and I remember I thought I could do it. And I like start walking through the little gate to go testify. And, he is on like the left side of me, and I could just feel my entire body harden on that side. And I remember thinking, okay, go sit up there. And my feet were just locked into the ground. And I'm like, step, this internal dialogue of like, walk up there. And I was saying to myself, I can't do it. I can't do it. And I remember I wanted to turn. I kind of turned and I locked eyes with the prosecutor, and I just took a deep breath. And I was pregnant with my daughter, and I just kind of channeled her energy. And I'm like, I have to do this. And so I went up there, and, the defense attorney started questioning me, saying that I got into a cab with him that night and we were having consensual relations. And that's how the DNA that got him was some saliva on my chest. So they tried to say that was consensual. And then I followed him to Newport, but then they were questioning what I was wearing, what I had been drinking, what my sex life was like before that, what kind of person I was. And I was so mad. I was in fury. And I think, I can't live in your shoes. The injustice that you've had to endure and how you've been treated, it breaks my heart. It makes me really pissed off for you too. Really pissed. It does.
Well, I am pissed off for you too. So we can both be pissed off for each other.
Because you can't, and it's so insane, and then questioning your character on top of it, and then lying about it and creating these stories and knowing in your heart what's truth and what's lie. It's infuriating. It's infuriating.
You mentioned that you were pregnant at the time. And in fact, that in your book, you talk about how your pregnancy was actually the tipping point of what determined whether or not you decided that you wanted to go to trial. Can you tell me about that decision?
Yeah. So, my ex-husband and I, we didn't have the easiest time getting pregnant with our son. And so I had to have 2 IUIs. So it's not like IVF, it's less. But I remember we did get pregnant. We were so grateful that I was pregnant that we didn't want to find out the sex, and whether boy or girl, the name was going to be Charlie. So I was shocked. I used to have cysts. Fast forward, I call my gyno and I'm like, my period's being weird again. I'm having cramps. I'm having these cysts act up again. And they're like, well, you have to take a pregnancy test. And I was like, I'm not pregnant. And they were like, no, well, you just have to take one. So I literally pee on a stick. I take my son to daycare. I go teach yoga at my yoga studio at the time. And I don't even look at it. And then I come back after and there's a positive sign. And I was shocked and could not believe it. My prosecutor calls and says, after 5 years of delay, we're going to trial. There's no more delays. And I thought of all the excuses in the world. I'm like, my son's young. I'm finally turning a profit in my yoga studio. Like, I can't leave. And I had all these reasons why I couldn't. And he told me, well, the maximum this guy can get is 10 years if you don't go. And just some background, my DNA evidence was the strongest from my rape kit, the match. So mine was to go first. And then the other victims' trials were to go after. And then I was to testify in those as well.
Wow.
And so
that's a lot.
Yeah. So I was like, well, I'm going to have to call you back. And I kind of put it in the back of my mind. Fast forward, this one, I'm like, we need to find out the sex. And I'll never forget the moment, finding out it's like you're having a girl. And I just started crying because it took me out of me and it took me to her and to everybody that has ever been a victim, everyone's daughters, friends, sisters. And so I was like, I'm going to trial. And it was because of her that, she gave me the strength to go. And I don't think I would have.
Yeah. Yeah. That really resonated with me. I was never pregnant on trial or anything like that, but, becoming pregnant, particularly with my daughter, really put things in perspective and gave me my own sense of urgency to heal myself so that I could be healed for her and so that I wouldn't inadvertently pass on my trauma and my baggage onto her. And so that I completely understand and resonate with that feeling of like, no, I need to figure this. I need to do what needs to be done. And this is not just about me anymore. And like that sudden, like all-consuming perspective shift of especially having a daughter. Like I don't know, there's just something really special about that.
Well, you've had to endure with women, not only rape, homicide, murder, and then going through and being accused. Like, I can't, the layers there are so intense. And as a mother, when you have a daughter, you feel that protection. But then as you're saying, it's like, how do you, like, what a beautiful gift our daughters have given us to want to continue healing and to pursue these things. And, you know, and to really, I think that's like fuel, at least for me, to keep healing and keep going and to get me to trial. But, you know, we also don't want to, as you're saying, like, how do you, it's the balance. How do we not pass on all these things? We have to continuously work at it, continuously.
So let's talk about healing, because I think one of the really special things about your book is you have a lot to say about healing. You've clearly thought about healing a lot. Let's preface by saying that, like, you got a very good outcome in this trial.
Right.
He was found guilty. He was sentenced to the maximum amount of time that he could be sentenced to.
In 2016, Kevin Francois was sentenced to 137.75 years in prison. Francois was also charged in a second case from 2007 involving very similar facts. But upon his 2016 conviction, prosecutors dismissed the second case due to the mandatory prison sentence the defendant now faces.
And in that moment, you dropped the word free again. But were you free?
I thought I was. It was just starting the opening of my path to finding that freedom, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you thought you were free, but then what?
I still hadn't told anyone, so I'm pregnant. I have this yoga studio in downtown Austin. I'm very close with all the people that work for me, you know, and I still was living this lie. They didn't know I was flying back and forth to Arizona, going to trial. They had no idea. I mean, it's so wild that I was able to compartmentalize those things. But I did that for a long time, and I started to feel like I can't do this anymore after trial ended, because I thought, man, I'm so lucky to have justice, but gosh, every victim deserves this. And so I there was this feeling. I ended up connecting with my forensic nurse, who ended up moving to San Antonio, which is just like 45 minutes from where I lived. And we had coffee, and I couldn't believe that she had dedicated her whole life to, I mean, her work and the work of my officer to get me to go there, to feel safe enough, collected the tiny bit of saliva that would put this man away and never allow him to harm anybody again, you know? And so she's been working with children, and I left that, and like, I was driving away, and like the hairs on my body were kind of sticking up. And I thought, whoa, I need to start talking about it. It was just this weird, like, clarity that I need to start speaking. So I started speaking with just the young girls internally that I was very good friends with at the studio. And, you know, they say it's like 1 out of 6 American women will be the victim of attempted rape or completed. And it wasn't. And it was 7 out of 8 of the young
of your friends that you spoke to.
Yes.
Wow.
And they shared it with me, and I thought, this has got to change. This was before Me Too, and don't get me started on Me Too, because I don't think that's enough. I'm like, this is not enough. There's no tools there for people and survivors, and we still need to keep talking about it. So then I started, you know, confiding, and then I talked to my yoga studio about it. I had like a speaking engagement. We did yoga, and then I shared with them. And then I had women in their 70s waiting for me after class, sharing with me stories that they had never told anybody ever, you know, and so then I started talking about it, but what I realized was I was kind of in over my head, because then I started getting people's stories. I was getting re-triggered. And then I was like, oh, I don't want to keep talking about this all the time. Like, it's all coming back, and I don't think I'm ready to do this work. And so I was speaking, and then I put it on pause. And I remember in 2020, I like threw like all my clothes in a bag, and I dropped them at Goodwill. And I'm like, I'm never speaking about what happened to me ever again. And then life. What
changed?
You know, there's a woman, Jan Sepich, and her daughter was brutally raped and murdered as a grad student in New Mexico. And she fought 15 years with her family for forensic DNA laws. And so I try to advocate her daughter, you know, it's called Katie's Law, the law that we got passed in Texas, the law that my perpetrator was caught through. And, you know, she retired, and we had met at Texas testifying for a bill there. And she literally drove down to meet me. She's like, I need to drive down from New Mexico and talk to you, Ashley, and for dinner. And I'm like, that's a big drive for dinner. Okay. And, you know, fast forward, I had been having this intuition, as we're talking about intuitive feminine, knowing that it was time to exit my yoga studio for a couple of years. So I exited it. And then I didn't know what I was doing. And I remember a week before she called me, I like broke down on the trail I was running, and I'm like, someone just show me what to do. Like, what am I supposed to do with my life? I don't know, but I followed my intuition and I took the leap, and now I don't know. And she ended up saying, I need to retire. I've been doing this for 15 years. I want to focus on, my husband's health, but I need you to carry on Katie's legacy and the legacy of this work. And coming from her, I would do anything she asked me to do. She's the most amazing woman. And then I started to really, realize I'm very passionate about these forensic DNA laws. And I know the injustice, not just for people like me, for protecting our kids. One of my friends, James Tillman, I met, he spent 18 and a half years in prison for a wrongful photo ID rape. These stories are too frequent, and we have these tools that we can actually help alleviate, and we can save lives in every realm. And why are we not maximizing it? So now that's what I do, but it's definitely a balance. It can be it's like, again, I thought I could escape it, and then life had a different plan. It's like, as much as I wanted to just do yoga and healing stuff, there was more that my story could offer. So I find myself now having to share my story every day to legislators.
Oh, sorry.
No, but I'm so grateful. See, this is great. And I'm so grateful, but it's just interesting how that happened. It's like, it's interesting, but there's also power in it. And I've kind of just surrendered to, this is my path for now, at least. This is the path right now.
Yeah. So, and that path is to pass laws that would make it so that anyone who is arrested for a felony has DNA taken and put through CODIS to see if they have if it catches any other unsolved crimes. That
is correct?
Typically the legislation that you're working towards.
CODIS, or the Combined DNA Index System, is a nationwide DNA database which allows state and local crime labs to electronically share and compare DNA profiles from crime scene evidence, convicted offenders, and arrestee samples.
How did you find yourself being put into contact with exonerees? Because, in the world of criminal justice, there tends to be this sort of idea that people who are for victims' rights tend to find themselves at odds with people who are defense attorneys who are working on innocence projects and trying to overturn cases. So how did you find yourself sort of unwittingly crossing that bridge and advocating on behalf of not just victims, but also wrongly convicted people?
I was shocked that there is that dynamic that you're talking about. I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. And I thought in my own case, let's just bring it in to me. Had it not been for DNA evidence, my brain, because I needed to have closure, I just started to believe it was this guy. I couldn't see. It was too scary for me to think this is a total stranger. So it had to be that guy. He had called my apartment at 3 a.m. He gave me the heebie-jeebies. He liked that movie, Ted, but like all these weird things. Totally not. Had it not been for DNA, and had we gone, like say someone would have arrested him on that, what if he would have been in prison? My greatest fear was that the wrong person would have to serve time for this crime.
Yeah.
And through DNA, they were able to prove in trial it was 38 trillion times more likely this guy's DNA on me than anybody else's. Then they had advanced in DNA technology, and so they did YSTR, which means they extracted the X chromosome and the Y chromosome, and then retested the DNA. They found it all over my body, and it aligned with every story that I told detectives right after. So in my case, bring that down. Shouldn't everyone be fighting for this? Everyone should be fighting for this. And, I connected with James, and his story is heartbreaking. In 18 and a half years, it was a wrong rape and kidnap accusatory on a photo ID. I just heard one of your other podcasts too, kind of a similar story, and it's heartbreaking all around for everybody. But someone was in prison with him and was like, I know James didn't do it. He kind of just like surrendered that he was going to have to live his life there. He gets out of prison, someone had been there with him. And so he goes to the Connecticut Innocence Project and says, my friend James, I know he's innocent. Can someone please look at this case? His voice just got lost in the system. And so they ended up taking it up. And he was the first man to be exonerated by DNA in the state of Connecticut. And we have actually spoken together to Pennsylvania Criminal Justice Reform Caucus, both on the power of DNA, on how it saved both of our lives. So it's powerful. I'm just as passionate about that as the other. And I know everyone comes from different walks of life and there are complexities, but this to me is the most amazing tool to help with this and to prevent it. So hopefully people never spend a day in jail.
I think that's great. And so what is the project that you advocate for?
It's DNA Justice Project. That's my organization. Yes.
Great. I feel like that's like even getting into all of like trying to go and talk to legislators and all of that and the potential opposition that you might face. Like that's a whole can of worms that I don't think we have time for because I've already kept you quite a bit of time. I did want to land though on your perspective of healing, because one thing that I get quite a bit is people saying to me, Amanda, why don't you just move on? And I would love to know what you would say to somebody who would tell you, Ashley, why don't you just move on?
Healing is a lifelong journey. It's something that's like a sadness, I think, that you kind of have to, like, there's a grief with that. Like, okay, there's not just one fix and you're never going to be totally free, but there's a lot. You can embrace the messiness. And in 2020, I hit like total rock bottom again. I don't know about you, but my healing journey has been like all over the place. One good day, one rock bottom, one great year, one really hard. And I was in a really hard place. And I'm finally coming out of that now. But, and I found this goddess. I wanted to get a new tattoo. And so I'm like, I want just like a goddess wrapped on my arm, you know? It's great. I'm really glad I didn't pull the trigger on that one, but but I came across this goddess called like Akeso. It's Akeso. And she was the goddess of like the journey of healing, not the cure. And I was like, yeah, that's so rad. Like, I love that. Like, we can actually all embrace, like, we are not perfect beings, and the social media thing, that's not real. Life is messy, and it's okay to look at our shadow sides. It's okay to apologize for harm that maybe we've caused. It's okay to grow. It's okay to embrace the journey. It's okay to have a bad day, a good day. It's okay to say like, hey, this happened to me, and this is how I'm healing. Like, embracing it, it's so liberating. And what I think is like, we can come from totally different walks of life, but our stories of healing connects us, and we can all find a different pathway. Yoga's not for everyone. It's for you, it's for me, but there's so many other things, you know, that you can do. But just knowing that like you're worth the journey of healing, and it's really hard. It's so hard. It's so hard, but it's so worth it. I can't imagine if I was still numbing out, I don't know that I would be alive today. I really don't. So I'd rather live in this messiness than the alternative, but it's beautiful too, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think that holding grief and processing trauma and doing the hard work of healing is something that you do every day for the rest of your life. It's not a thing, like the thing I like that you said in your book is that it's not something that you just check off of a list and say, okay, done. Like because you continue to grow and change as a human being, and you get to view your life through a new lens every day. You wake up a new person, and you like the things that happened to you never go away. You just get to hold them differently every day. And so I really appreciated that like hard-won wisdom that you obtained, that because that felt very, very true to me, that it's not something that you move on from. It's something that you grow out of.
You can follow Spence's organization, the DNA Justice Project, which works with states to pass laws which expand the national DNA database and utilize forensic DNA technology, on social media at DNA Justice Project. Her book, Silent Witness, is available wherever books are sold.
In the meantime, get lost with us. Find us on Bluesky at amandaknox.com.
At wisecracker.bsky.social.
You can learn more about our work and how to support it at amandaknox.com. And please, tell your friends, share on social media, and leave us a 5-star review.
Labyrinths is brought to you by Knox Robinson Productions. This episode was written and produced by us. Our managing producer is Andre Sapp, our assistant producer is Charlie Darnell, and our theme music is by Josh Budo Karp.